The Faithful Hall of Fame, Joshua. This is Joshua.
Hello.
Joshua was the leader of the Israelites, who God would use to take his people into the Promised Land.
Because despite claiming the same thing about Moses, Moses disqualified himself by assaulting a rock. Now you'd think that since Moses is mainly known for the Ten Commandments, assaulting rocks would be expressly prohibited by them. But surprisingly not, this proving that even the omnipotent Yahweh didn't know what to account for in just the imminent future.
Yeah, let's do it.
Joshua readied his people to cross the Jordan River, which was the only thing dividing the Israelites from the land that God had promised to them.
A land that, let's not forget from last episode, is already inhabited by people. People who would likely be less than keen to simply move out of the way for the convenience of the Israelites.
All right. Right here. Okay.
They camped beside the river for 3 days, waiting, just as the Lord had commanded them. At this time of year, the Jordan River was flooded and flowing with so much water that it was impossible to cross on foot.
I seem to recall one other such leader of the Israelite people having a similar experience with a body of water about 40 years prior to this. I guess Joshua got all the street cred of Moses without actually being able to deliver on any of it.
And then the Lord said, let there be light.
And then Carl Sagan said, let you be silent.
Hey, priest.
Yeah?
Come on.
God told Joshua to tell the people that the priests would carry the Ark of the Covenant and lead the people through the water. He told the priests to step into the rushing waters.
What? Huh?
And when they would do this, the waters would stop flowing.
Cute trick, Joshua, but remember the Red Sea? That was pretty cool. Any chance we could do that again instead?
Alright.
And as soon as the priests did this, the water of the Jordan River did stop flowing.
Yeah.
And the priests stood with the Ark of the Covenant on dry ground as the Israelites crossed to the other side.
Oh fuck, I hadn't read ahead before this because I was hoping for a cool surprise, but holy shit, that would have some consequences. People in the Middle East at that time understood the changing flow of their rivers very well, often making predictions based on them, such as when they should plant, where they should plant, and even where to build architecture. The people in that area relied on that river for just about everything, and now suddenly it just dries up for some people to walk across unhindered? That is some bullshit right there.
All right.
God told Joshua to send 12 men from the 12 tribes of Israel
Go get it.
to take 12 stones from the place that the priests were standing. When all this had been finished, as God commanded, Joshua called the priests from the Jordan.
We're good. Come on.
As their feet left the Jordan River, the waters came back into place, just as they had been.
Okay, hold on just 1 second. That video just showed the 12 people picking up rocks as ordered by Joshua. Joshua stacking them up in the middle of the dry riverbed, the priests walking across the riverbed, and then the same 12 guys holding the rocks again, which they will then in just a moment stack up next to the river in the exact same way that Joshua stacked them up in the river. What the fuck, animation team? I expect better from you. Also, yeah, they did just restore the flow of the water, but obviously a claim like that could not possibly be made without putting the river back afterward, or people would eventually catch on upon seeing that the river still existed. However, think of the absolute terror that must have ensued in every city that existed along that river for the time it took them to confusingly move those rocks.
Wow. Yeah.
They brought their stones to their camp and set them as a memorial, so future generations might remember the story of how God brought his people through the Jordan River on dry ground.
as opposed to when he let them walk through a fucking sea in an even more spectacular way. Now they're going to have a divide between the old and young Israelites, with the young ones all excited about the Jordan River and the old ones all left saying, "Back in my day, God moved entire seas so I could walk across without being inconvenienced. Damn kids and their Jordan rivers."
This is Joshua.
Yes, we know. Next.
Oh, hey.
Joshua was the leader of the Israelites, who God used to bring his people to the promised land.
Yeah, let's do it.
When God told Joshua it was time to take the promised land, Joshua sent spies into the city of Jericho. While those spies were in Jericho, they were protected by a woman named Rahab. The spies promised to spare Rahab and her family when they took back the land.
Yay!
And she hung a scarlet cord from her window to remind them of their promise.
See you soon!
Just in case you needed to know why the Israelites leave that specific house alone while they kill, rape, and pillage the rest of Jericho later in the story.
Now the Israelites had crossed the Jordan and were camped near the town of Jericho.
Hey, hello.
One day, Joshua looked up.
Huh?
Whoa, holy shit, what's up, dude, with the head the size of my torso?
And there was a man standing before him.
Hello.
The man said, "I am the commander of the army of the Lord." Joshua asked what the man wanted to tell him, and the Lord said he wanted Joshua to take the city of Jericho.
Isn't that the whole reason they came to Jericho in the first place? I mean, it's not like they were just going to be given the city. They didn't really have many other options beyond take it, but I guess thanks for the permission, Mr. Giant.
All right.
But that Joshua needed to follow his instructions exactly.
You got it.
Jericho was shut for fear of the Israelites.
You went home? Yeah, well.
No one came out and no one came in.
Let's think about this from an unbiased perspective. The people of Jericho already occupy this land. The Israelites have shown up, claiming that the land has been given to them by an invisible man in the sky, and apparently making it clear enough that they will fight for it that the people within the city are terrified of them. Who's the villain here?
So the Lord told Joshua to gather his soldiers and march around the city for 6 days.
Okay, look, I was in marching band, I get it. It can, theoretically be intimidating to see a large group of people marching around in perfect unwavering step with one another, but guys, the people of the city are already scared shitless of you. You aren't going to accomplish much with your march. I mean, it's not like the walls are just going to crumble before you because of your marching. Right? Right?
Mark.
The priests were to take the Ark of the Covenant, and 7 priests were to go in front of it, blowing a ram's horn. On the 7th day, they were to march around the city 7 times and blow the horn. Then all the people of Israel were to give a great shout.
Then what?
And then the city walls would fall.
God fucking damn it.
Whoa! Yeah, let's do it.
So Joshua said, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city."
Okay, that's certainly not the end of that quote, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt here and hope that they clear it up before the end of the video, and if not, we'll cover it at the end.
And the people did shout. And the walls did fall.
Let's go!
The Israelites overtook the city of Jericho as God had commanded.
Rahab.
They remembered Rahab because of her faithfulness. Joshua was faithful in carrying out God's commands, and the Israelites took many other cities as God told them they would.
Oh, nice.
For God will never fail to fulfill his promises. So the Israelites came to live in the land that God had promised Abraham, Isaac, Israel, Joseph, and Moses many years ago.
Oh my god, does this mean we'll never have to hear the Faithful Hall of Fame intro again? Fucking finally! Anyway, I guess since they decided not to expand on the rest of Joshua's "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city" quote, we should probably do that now, huh? Don't worry, I'm sure it's nothing awful that got taken out to sugarcoat the story and convince the kids that the Israelites were actually the good guys of the story, right? Okay, let's see here. Joshua chapter 6, verses 16 through 26. And at the 7th time, when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. And the city and all that is within it shall be devoted to the Lord for destruction. Only Rahab, the prostitute, and all who are with her in her house shall live, because she hid the messengers whom we sent. But you keep yourselves from the things devoted to destruction, lest when you have devoted them to take any of the devoted things and make the camp of Israel a thing for destruction, and bring trouble upon it. But all silver and gold and every vessel of bronze and iron are holy to the Lord. They shall go to the treasury of the Lord." So the people shouted, and the trumpets were blown. As soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted a great shout, and the wall fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they captured the city. Then they devoted all the city to destruction, both men and women, young and old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys, with the edge of a sword. But to the 2 men who had spied out the land, Joshua said, "Go into the prostitute's house, and bring out from there the woman and all who belong to her, as you swore to her." So the young men who had been spies went in and brought out Rahab and her father and mother and brothers and all who belonged to her. And they brought all her relatives and put them outside the camp of Israel. And they burned the city with fire and everything in it. Only the silver and gold and vessels of bronze and iron they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. But Rahab, the prostitute, and her father's household and all who belonged to her, Joshua saved alive. And she has lived in Israel to this day, because she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. Joshua laid an oath on them at the time, saying, "Cursed before the Lord be the man who rises up and rebuilds this city Jericho. At the cost of his firstborn shall he lay its foundation. At the cost of his youngest son shall he set up its gates." Okay, so, just as I suspected, nothing too important got cut out. Just, the systematic slaughter of every man, woman, and child throughout the entire city, followed by the slaughter of all the animals, followed by the burning of the city, followed by a curse, threatening the children of anybody who dares to rebuild it, all while consistently referring to the woman that you made out to be a big hero in the previous video as simply the prostitute. Just that sort of filler stuff. So let's think about this a little bit. Would it be appropriate to tell children a story about a group of people invading a city and killing every person they come across? Probably not. So it makes sense that those sections were omitted from the children's version. Kinda like how the Disney versions of all the stories always neglect to mention the horrible endings that are normally present in the original subject matter. The difference, however, is that the Disney stories are not told as actual historical fact or as part of a book from which children are expected to derive their morals. And as such, when all the atrocities are removed from children's Bible stories, it serves only to indoctrinate the children with a pressure-washed, shiny clean, perfect version of events that makes them believe that everything God supposedly does is good, despite there being demonstrable evidence to the contrary. This is not acceptable. It creates a cognitive dissonance in the developing minds of children as they grow older and are eventually exposed to the more horrific aspects of the story that they'd been shielded from throughout their childhood. And that is one reason why it's so important to fight back against these videos meant for children, because they are every bit as harmful as the religious extremists who deny science and discriminate against their fellow man based on the laws of Bronze Age primitives. Anyway, that's all for this video. If you liked it, be sure to leave a like and a comment down below with suggestions for future videos you'd like to see me cover. Check the description for a link to my public Discord server where you can chat with me and other like-minded individuals, and as always, have a blessed day, fellow heathens.